Hey, this is Jose Galison on No Way Jose on the Liberty Movement YouTube channel. We also got a library too now, or LBRY, whatever the hell it is. Today I got our guest James Jenneman, the urban agorist. So how you doing? How you doing today, James?
Hey, not too bad. I'm just living the dream here in snowy Minnesota. I hear you're having some inclement weather too. So
yeah, I'm up here in Tampa, and we got a little bit of a hurricane going on, which whatever, is no big deal. I mean, hopefully it doesn't cut power, but it's pretty low level shit. So
yeah,
we should be all right.
I had to brush my car off for the first time of the winter season now. So I'm just bracing myself for huge dumps because 2020. I mean, if it can get any worse, then it's going to be a huge snowy winter coming up, starting in early November.
Yeah, I don't miss that shit. I'm originally from Maine, so I used to have to deal with that stuff. But
damn.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've lived in Maine, Tennessee, and Florida, and I definitely Tennessee was kind of the sweet spot. I like that area because Florida's way too fucking hot, but yeah, Maine was way too cold.
Tennessee's on my short list if I ever were to move.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, that fucking Vin episode. That I gotta say, props on that, dude. That thing's killing it. I mean, like I said to you offline before, I knew you were just like waiting for that break, and then you're just gonna boom bust through.
Well, and then Vin Armani is a genius, and the thing is, though, he's so esoteric that it's really tough to grasp what he's saying sometimes. Yeah. And so I really wanted to get him on and just kind of boil down what the hell he's talking about. Because when you're talking about magic and mysticism and stuff like that, not only in the 21st century, but also to libertarians, libertarians are hard-headed rationalists, and we're not living in an age of rationalism. Where even trust the science is not about science. It's it's about the priesthood. It's about trusting the person with the symbolic white coat telling you to wear your symbolic mask. So
yeah, I really want to get Pete Quinones, and I want him to talk about that because it's almost like nothing wrong with Vin. I like Vin, but he's almost like the visionary, and then it's almost like it filters through Pete, and then Pete then makes it more susceptible for the common man. Not even that he's still, even then it's still a little esoteric, but it almost like provides a little bit of a filter. You're like, okay.
Well, I've got an interview with Pete coming out on the 19th, so nice. A week from tomorrow. So that'll kind of tie it together too, I think. But that said, I mean, so first of all, we didn't really introduce my podcast. I guess I podcast at Urban Agorist. You can find it on iTunes and Spotify. Although Spotify just today alerted me that there is a new episode, so it took like 3 days to upload. So if you're going to subscribe on iTunes. Look for Urban Agorist. But yeah, Vin Armani, he really did a good job, I think, for Vin Armani of boiling it down and dumbing it down for a dummy like me. So yeah, it's been kind of taken off, so that's great. My YouTube was putting fireworks up on the screen for my views and subscribers. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah. You definitely killed it, and I'm looking forward to where you go. And it's kind of the purpose, a little bit of what we're doing here is I kind of had the idea of I wanted to just interview you, and not on necessarily any particular topic. I mean, we are going to go over urban agorism a little bit, but mostly kind of want to talk about you in general and just what you're about. Because I mean, hopefully I expect big things of you, and I think you'll go far. And I really do think you're gonna keep on moving. And I know the product is kind of you, and I think people want to know who you are. And so I mean, I don't know. I know there's something to that. Like whenever I start podcasts, there is some like weird, almost mysterious element when you're like, you kind of want to know the person.
Sure.
And it's almost like you reveal little elements of it as you like go on that journey with them. And so kind of start out here, and it'd be a little treat for people who jump on early to the James train. So yeah. So with that, like, tell me about you. Tell me about I guess we can start off with like the superficial type shit. That's like kind of just the on the surface stuff, like where you're from, just growing up. Sure. Just like imagine this as two guys at a bar, and you're just telling me your fucking life story.
So yeah, I mean, whoa, I almost knocked my microphone off my desk, which would have been tragic. Yeah, I was born in Dallas, lived in Tennessee for a few years when I was little. moved back to Dallas. My upbringing, I mean, being that you're ideological but not political, I'll try to steer into kind of the ideological stuff. I wasn't raised in a political family, so to speak, but we were definitely ideological. My dad was a fan of Rush Limbaugh and always voted Republican, but didn't really like bring me up to understand how politics works and that sort of thing. Like my earliest memory, one of my earliest memories is, Ronald Reagan on TV talking about something. I don't know what. So I guess I was kind of raised in like a Reagan household, so to speak. We were also Catholic, so there was that kind of coloring of the family. I had a brother and a sister. My brother died a few years ago.
I'm sorry.
And so and actually his death is kind of what sparked in me the need to be self-sufficient and the need to not live my life for other people, I guess. I've been, I'm in my mid 30s. And so I've been employed my entire adult life. And I don't want to be employed for my entire life. Both because I value freedom, obviously, but also because I don't want to be beholden to somebody else, and I don't want to be reliant on somebody else for my life and my livelihood. So I've dabbled in online business and entrepreneurship and retail arbitrage, which is just going to Target and buying stuff on clearance and reselling it online. Affiliate marketing, that kind of thing. And all of that stuff paired with my libertarian ideology, which, I just like everybody else, I found libertarianism via Ron Paul. I found Ron Paul, and I told this story a million times. So, if you've listened to my podcast, then you know already. But I found Ron Paul from this Catholic blogger, and the Catholic blogger was super anti-libertarian. But since Ron Paul was both pro-life and anti-war, this blogger was like, well, I guess, even though he's libertarian and I hate libertarianism, he doesn't promote objective evil. And so I guess I kept the libertarianism. I kind of abandoned the Catholicism. I'm gay, so it doesn't really match with the lifestyle that I'm, kind of pursuing, I guess. I appreciate the spirituality. I appreciate the ritual. I appreciate the tradition, all of that stuff. But, I wouldn't be able to be a Catholic in good standing. So I guess and when I think about the existence of things outside this realm of being, and I've been doing a lot more of that recently, especially inspired by Vin and Pete's discussions. And before that, inspired by Thaddeus Russell, who he calls himself a postmodernist. But really, I mean, he's just a agnostic in everything. He doesn't like, and I don't completely deny the existence of, objectivity or objective truth. It's just that I don't think that we can know it.
Exactly. That's kind of my point. It's like, even if there is an objective truth, functionally there isn't. So it's kind of like you almost are in the weeds, and you can fight to find that objective truth all you want, but you're, at the end of the day, no matter what, you have your own, like, if there is some magical power out there that is what the diktat of what objective truth is, at the best you can only filter it through your subjective reality.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the big thing. I mean, no matter what we know or what we think we know, it is all filtered through that. And you only have to look at the quote unquote objective media to understand that. I mean, when you've got propaganda, like just blatant propaganda coming from the paper of record, the New York Times, or, the 24-hour news cycle on CNN and Fox and MSNBC, all talking about the same things largely, but casting them in such different light from one another. you come to understand that even if there is an accurate way to portray a narrative, there's no way of knowing which portrayal is correct, if any of them are correct.
Mm-hmm.
And so, my Twitter bio, I describe myself as a postmodernist.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know what that means. I've never read Foucault or Derrida or Lyotard or any of the other, postmodernist thinkers. I might even be like a postmodern. I have no idea.
I've still yet to take a dive there. I mean, I'm working on Stirner right now, and I'm a slow reader, and I think that's the next trail I want to go down is probably the postmodern. So I do think there's a lot to offer there. I know a lot of people shit on it, but I do think there's a lot to be offered there from that line of thinking. It doesn't mean you have to completely swallow it whole.
Well,
I know.
And if you're a slow reader, then Stirner is going to be especially slow going, I think. I mean, his stuff is so dense, and translated into English from the German, right?
I've been loving it, honestly.
That rational egoism really rings true to me. The Stirner gets kind of a bad rap because he's sort of distilled down to might makes right. Mm-hmm. And so, libertarians obviously would think that a Stirnerite would say, I can violate the NAP as long as I win, right? Mm-hmm. And that's not really it. Like,
it's more to it.
Yeah, there's way more to it. You to act in your rational self-interest is not. And even Ayn Rand, I mean, kind of the proto-libertarian, or maybe not the proto-libertarian. I guess Stirner kind of is the proto-libertarian.
He's the pre-Ayn Rand, is the way I see it. So.
Yeah. Acting in your rational self-interest does not mean acting with disregard for other people.
Yeah.
It
just will fuck your self-interest.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I know. I mean, there is something to that. I do think a lot of people. Honestly, it kind of brings it back a lot to what Fad talks about a lot, about how natural rights. And I do generally operate under the moral or philosophical framework of natural rights and stuff. But at the end of the day, that is more of it's kind of the is-ought type divide. It's kind of like, this is more like you can say all you want. It's an is, and it's an is. But at the end of the day, you can't prove that, and it's an ought. And I can try to convince you that you ought to follow these rules of natural laws and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, really what it comes down to is Stirner's right. Might does make right to an extent. But at the same time, when you have individualists all over the world, combined, at the end of the day, it actually works out better to everyone's rational self-interest if we all just learn to fucking get along.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's it. I mean, to me, morality is preference. Like you're acting according to your own preferences, and you hope that other people will act according to your preferences, but really they're only acting according to their preferences. And for the most part, our preferences just happen to converge. That's what we call objective morality,
Yeah. I do think it's funny. I mean, this may be a dishonest way of looking at it, but it seems like every objective morality argument always boils down to, well, here's this horrible thing, so therefore there must be objective morality. And it's just it's almost like just screeching into the ether of well, there are bad things, so therefore there must be objective morality. Or, it's kind of that same idea. And it's you can wish that all you want, but at the end of the day, you're trying to make an ought into an is. And it's you can use your rational, faculties to try to convince people of your ought, but that's really where we're stuck at. And until the God comes down from the clouds and reveals himself, we're still stuck at ought, not is,
Well, and that's especially true, or especially applicable right now, being that we're kind of ushering into what Vin and Pete are calling the dim age. It's really important, really, really, really important that libertarians get out of this realm of logical consistency, or my facts and logics are owning the left, or whatever it is. You're not owning anybody, because look who's in power. Even the people who like Donald Trump, for instance, understands that we're not in an age of facts and logic.
No.
That's why he keeps saying stuff like "Make America Great Again" and "Build the Wall," and now more recently here in November of 2020, fraud. He's using the word fraud, and like his lawyers aren't alleging fraud. The election is not like these lawsuits aren't based on election fraud. It's just the word fraud has a lot of power. It's like a magical spell that it casts on people. On Trump's allies, it casts a spell that says, "Hey, these people are dishonest and they're fraudsters and they're crooked." And on his detractors, it casts a different spell. It casts a spell of like, "Look at these people trying to distill this down to one word: fraud. Why can't they just accept it and move on, just like Hillary did in 2016?" Ignoring the fact that Hillary conceded the night of the media calling it, but we have gone through 4 years of Russia collusion, these conspiracy theories.
Oh, she's gone into it multiple times about that shit. Not to bring this too into the political, but we're not even, this is not even really, we're not claiming one side or the other. We're just, merely stating facts. Like, she's been screeching for the past 4 years about how it got stolen from her and shit, So
she conceded.
She conceded, but not really.
She conceded because that's what you're officially supposed to do. Mm-hmm. She didn't actually concede.
Yeah.
And even if she's been like, I know that she's given interviews and talked and stuff, and she wrote that book and stuff, but I haven't seen a single interview with her, just because I don't really pay attention. But this narrative of Russia. That's another magical spell. There's no facts and logic. And what's really funny is that I have a friend. I have a few friends that are complete. I'm not a fan of this term, but they suffer from Trump derangement syndrome.
TDS,
yeah, and they think that because of Trump's campaign people being convicted of, quote, lying to investigators or lying to Congress or lying to the FBI or whatever, that proves and is evidence of Russia stealing the election on behalf of Trump in 2016. And the only reason that someone could come to that conclusion is if they're under some kind of spell. And it's not like a magical, like Alakazam type spell. Mm-hmm. It's the kind of spell that it changes reality just by virtue of words being spoken into reality. It's almost like what some Christian denominations call the speaking your blessings into existence, or the secret, the book that came out a few years ago that was real big, where whatever you speak into the universe, so long as you really, really believe it, it's what actually is.
Mm-hmm. I think there's some. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, cut me off. Go ahead.
I think. I mean, I was just thinking about this, but I think with the whole magic thinking, like, and stuff that they're going to do, it's almost like there's so many different facets to the whole magic thing, and it's so genius that the idea that Vin kind of birthed. But like one level of it is kind of like we kind of went to like moral like subjectivity and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, I think there is technically something is. You can have objective morality, but it's within a framework. Like, because everyone has their own moral framework. And so, like, per my moral framework, I can determine what's objectively wrong and which isn't based on certain logical principles. But the problem is I think too many libertarians are stuck in this, like, single dimension of, this is what is. And this is, like, so when they run into someone who has a different line of thinking, they try to, like, bring them on this logical level and be like, it's almost like how Michael Malice goes into a lot of the midwits. And it's almost like we have a bunch of libertarian midwits.
Yeah.
They're just too stuck on this, like, well, here is my moral framework, and here is what is wrong and what isn't. And it's like, they don't fucking care. So it's like, you need to learn how to hack their different moral frameworks or logical frameworks and find ways to plant little seeds, and like, ideally, it would be great if you could fucking sit them down and logically explain them through everything, but most people don't give a fuck about that. So you need to learn how to hack them, and that's where this magic comes into. And you need to find ways to, maybe not necessarily lie, but like one thing I've been talking about, especially with like the whole liberty movement for a long time, is like, because like this kind of came on the heels of me reading Edward Bernays' propaganda, and there's something to that, to like where you kind of fucking like, it's not even necessarily you're lying to them, because you don't want to lie to somebody, because if you lie to somebody, they find out you lied later, and that might be an issue, and that can kind of undermine every bit of progress you made.
Yeah.
But it's more about finding ways to present things to people to make it, more palatable to their sensibilities. And that's kind of, I think, a lot. I mean, it's not even that, even then doesn't capture the essence of what he's talking about with the magic, but there's so many different parts to it. But I think that's like one aspect of the magic that they talk about. It's like, you can sit there and try to like logically explain everything, or you can learn basic marketing principles and how to fucking get people to kind of understand, your side a little bit more, or at least certain principles and such. You know what I mean? It's more just about elevating your thinking and not just being the midwit and moving past, this is zeros and ones of like your moral or logical frameworks, if that makes sense.
I think so. I think there's a lot of, so libertarians by and large are very intelligent people. So I don't want to
like the midwits of the smart people, I guess would almost be the better way to put it.
Yeah, it's true. I mean,
like they need to bring it to another level of thinking almost,
According to Malice, a midwit is someone with like a 115 IQ. Not quite genius level, but definitely above average. And
I was just using to illustrate they need to bring it to another level. Not necessarily, get what I mean.
But the other thing, in midwits and then also NPCs, non-playable characters or non-player characters, whatever it is. These are the two kind of things that became popular largely because of Michael Malice. I think NPCs were more of a 4chan thing, but Malice had a really good explanation of it on Nightshade. These are people who they just repeat what they hear. So like, here's a big one. The day after the election, all the masks are going away because COVID will be solved. And that frame of reference is all that is the belief that this global phenomenon where every country almost locked down and every world leader is encouraging the wearing of masks, and this horrible virus that legitimately, I think, is killing lots of people, was all just a hoax to get Donald Trump, which to me is the most absurd thing in the. It's absolutely ridiculous to think that this mask hoax is meant to get Donald Trump, get him out of office.
Yeah, I was on that track for a minute, but then when it first started, but then once things came out, you're like, I mean, maybe. I mean, I'm not putting outside the realm of possibility, but it becomes less and less likely as time went on. Sorry.
And and I mean, really, the narrative goes so much deeper than that. Biden has completely bought into it, but it's just because Biden was already bought into it. Biden is, is one of the world leaders who is like part of this global cabal to quote Build Back Better. I mean, the whole Build Back Better thing is not Biden's campaign slogan. It's something that he borrowed from the World Economic Forum. And they've been saying it for years. There's evidence. I mean, buildbackbetter.com, which is Biden's website for his policy proposals, that was purchased in the year 2016. It's almost like Build Back Better was actually part of the Hillary campaign, assuming that she was going to win the 2016 election, and when she didn't, they had to put it off. And lo and behold, maybe luckily for the World Economic Forum and the that sort of community, for lack of a better term, maybe it was luck for them. Maybe it was planned. I don't know. I don't put a whole lot of stock into the plandemic thing, but mainly that's just because I have this need to be respectable.
I think it's a mix. That's my personal opinion.
It's
kind
very
of how Ron Paul put it. He called it a hoax, but the way he was presenting it was a hoax in the sense that it was blasted out of proportion, and to some people's benefit, it seems,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, I completely reject the idea that this is just the flu. I think it's worse than the flu. But is it worse than every flu? No. Not at all. I mean, you just have to look at the numbers. It's not worse than every flu. It's probably worse than the average flu. And it's probably going to be with us forever, just like the flu. We haven't had epidemic level flu infections forever. We've had a flu season since about 1918, when there was a huge pandemic that killed lots and lots of people. And eventually, within a couple of years, the flu became manageable and what they call endemic. And it was mild. It's just a mild thing. Everybody gets the flu every year. You can get the vaccine and it may or may not work. Usually it works. But it's not killing people by the hundreds of thousands like it did. And you just learn to live with it. And that's what's going to happen with COVID. We already know that. It's not like new information. It's not like I'm spouting off a conspiracy theory. Every epidemiologist will tell you that this thing is going to be endemic, and we're going to have a COVID season every year. And my issue is that also going to be a mask season every year? Is that also going to be a lockdown season every year? Is it going to be, restaurants have to close at 10 o'clock during this season every year? At what point does the government say, hey, I can't control this? And so I'm not going to try. And I don't think the answer to that is, I think the answer to that question is never. The government will take this and run with it. And that's why I oppose the mandates so forcefully. Even if COVID is every bit as bad as they say it is, the mandates are far worse, because just like in the war on terror, we've sacrificed lots and lots of liberties that we had or presumably had prior to 9/11. And now we've got the government spying on us, and we've got the government torturing people, and we've got the government. I mean, the TSA didn't exist prior to 9/11, and now it's just part of life. And it doesn't need to be. The TSA fails in everything it tries. It's just a huge money pit. So I know I hate to keep bringing it back to politics. But,
no, it's fine. I mean, I don't really feel like it was necessarily political per se, but I think there is something too, like it's almost the whole daddy government thing. And for me, it's so irritating because a lot of this shit is just like, people need to grow the fuck up, because it's just like people just accept these things and just think daddy government's going to fix it. Like, there are so many people who think, like you said, when the election's done, masks will go away. Or there are still people who think, we need to beat this thing. And it's just like, what is your parameters for beating it? It's like, and it is just like, people don't understand how viruses work. There's just so many to it. And I actually want to bring it back to the magic. And one thing you brought up, the NPCs, and it kind of made me think of something of another good way to explain perhaps what the magic is to someone. It would be almost like, you have to understand the masses are NPCs. They just are. And so that's why they're attaching to these different things, like, things will get better after the election, or, we need to beat COVID or whatever. And it's like, this thing's not going to go away. And it's just they accept falsehoods, but it's like a video game with an NPC. And the magic is, you have an NPC and you want them to do something. And everyone's done it in a game where they have an NPC they fuck with for one reason or another to make it do a certain action that isn't necessarily its intended action. Yep. And it's like, that's kind of what the magic is. You're hacking the fucking game. You're fucking making the NPC do what you want by fucking altering it in whatever method or way, you can think of.
That's so and it's so funny. I mean, I don't play a lot of video games, but when I do, like going up to the NPC and just seeing what their script is, saying every possible like bit of dialogue to them so that they give you every possible bit of dialogue back is really funny. And that's why trolling is so fun and also so effective. Malice. I'm not a good troll. I'm really bad at it. I get too much into my facts and logic shit. But when Michael Malice, just makes a grammar error on purpose to get the NPCs all riled up, correcting his mistakes or just whatever it is, a historical error saying that Stalin built the Berlin Wall or whatever, Hitler built the Berlin Wall or whatever it is. Yeah, I think it's a lot of it's a lot of fun to watch. It's not. I don't think it's something that I have the heart or the brain to actually do, but
it's
yeah,
fun.
I mean,
It's fun to watch a good troll.
Yeah, NPC is going to NPC, and it's fun to see him do it.
And it's like people. It's almost like people have this. I feel like too many people aren't embracing the magic and are wanting to make an NPC not an NPC. And it's like, sure, that can work occasionally. Every now and then you might magically make an NPC not an NPC. But for the most part, that's not what's going to work. It's you need to find the ways to manipulate the NPCs to do what you want. Yep. And not necessarily in a dishonest way, because that might backfire. You know, I mean, if we're looking at this from an NPC way, that may not get you the result you want. It's kind of like how we went into earlier, how just because might equals right doesn't mean you go around kill fucking everyone, because that's not going to work out to your advantage.
and the other thing, you know, every so often, like, oh God, Tom Woods and to an extent Jeffrey Tucker. I think Jeffrey Tucker's more into the magic than Tom Woods is. Tom has given 3 just phenomenal speeches on COVID and lockdowns. The most recent one was at an event down in Texas with Ron Paul. And it just came out like yesterday. And he puts up all these graphs, and it's graphs of COVID cases or COVID hospitalizations or whatever. Hey, you just froze up on me. Are you still there?
Oh, you froze up on me. So I'm here.
It's either my connection or your hurricane. He's got all these graphs that he puts up, and he's like, guess where the mask mandate went into effect. And so the graph, you know, is spiky, and then shoots straight up. And the mask mandate kind of went in where the spike is, or where it's just a little bit rumbly, nowhere near where the spike is. But the mask mandate was already in place during the spike. And this is really cool. To someone who's into charts and graphs and facts and logic and stuff like that, but it's not magic.
If anything, that's more, in my eyes, I love Tom.
Yeah.
But that's more like morale for the troops.
Exactly.
That's what that is.
So I tweeted it. I tweeted it out today, and I said, I said, hang on, let me just find it real quick. It says, another COVID barn burner from Tom Woods. I know fighting magic with charts is a fool's errand in the dim age, but this kind of thing is a nice brain massage for the weary. And that's what it is. For people who are into graphs and facts and logic and that kind of thing, it is. It's like a brain massage. It's like just a little vacation from being mired in this irrational, illogical, emotional, mystical magic.
There's something too,
and
I think like go ahead, my bad.
No, yeah, sorry, but just to kind of finish the point, there are some people who are going to be convinced by that. It's not very many, I don't think, but you wouldn't have had a Ron Paul revolution without that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. You know, the whole
idea of the remnant, yeah.
Yeah, and granted, I mean, a lot of the people who were attracted by Ron Paul were attracted by his magic. And that's why rather than staying, you know, part of the libertarian set, they moved on to the Trump set. That's the libertarian to alt-right pipeline that everybody was talking about a few years ago.
But like, look at, I'm trying to cut off your train of thought,
please.
The two commonalities between those two individuals, they're fucking bold.
Yeah.
So I think that there's some magic to being bold, and there's like different forms of magic. There's some that's more subtle, and I think there was something to that. There are people who are drawn into that kind of bold, kind of fucking magic, you know? And I think that's, yeah.
And they know how to distill down big ideas that might be unpopular into slogans.
Yes.
And the Fed has so much packed into it. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, half the people chanting "and the Fed" don't even know what the hell the Fed is.
Yeah, I think when I was young, I didn't even know what the Fed was. I just thought federal, the Feds, you know, fettuccine, like all those fuckers. Yeah. Like that's just kind of. I just thought it meant the federal everything in general. I'm like, yeah fuck those guys.
Yeah. Thankfully, my high school government class, my teacher in high school, he was from Massachusetts. He was a super progressive, but he let us know. He said, a lot of people think that the president is the most powerful person in the world, but he's not. It's the chairman of the Federal Reserve Board. Mm. And that sent me down a little bit of a rabbit hole. So I kind of knew what the Fed was, you know, in 2000 or whatever it was I took that class.
And that's been a truth that's been around for a while. That was a point Lysander Spooner brought up, that like it's the international bankers, the ones who pull the purse strings, or where the real power is at. Yep. And like this isn't anything new. Yeah. So
and then, you know, I mean, Alex Jones has been saying it forever too, which
there's truth to it.
Is a bit of a taint. So that's something. There's this this new, speaking of taint agents, there's this new social network. There's a bunch of new social networks that people are moving over to. There's MeWe, which I'm on. Yeah,
me too.
And there's Float. Float's great. It's like a Twitter alternative that was created by a Ron Paul guy. So I trust it a little bit more than I trust the other ones. And then there's Library, which you're on and I'm on, using video sharing. But there's one, it's called Parlor. And all of the right-wing Republicans and right-wing libertarians and boomer cons and all that are just really, really gung-ho about Parlor. Parlor was founded by a guy who directly out of college had a security clearance job at a defense contractor. He then moved on to Amazon Web Services during the time when AWS was like slated to be the official cloud server for the Defense Department. And then he went on to found Parlor. Parlor was an obscure thing that nobody had ever heard of until Devin Nunes, the ranking member, the highest level Republican on the House Intelligence Committee, started pumping it up, and then all the other Republican Congress people started following suit with him. This is a honeypot operation, in my opinion, for the intelligence community to get all of the right wingers online in one place, speaking their minds.
You're all getting honey dicked.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know what the hell I'm drinking. I'm drinking tequila, so I don't know what brought that up. Oh, a taint agent. I was looking the other day. Someone was like, "Hey, you have to back this up with facts. You can't just say that Parlor is an intelligence operation. You need to figure out what it actually is."
They're all spooks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Back to Sterner.
Yeah.
But also, it is like it's run by the spooks in the CIA.
Yeah.
So that's when I Googled this guy, the founder of Parlor, and he's on LinkedIn. Like you can look at his resume. So there was his LinkedIn profile, and then the next hit was Stormfront, the neo-Nazi publication. I think it was probably DuckDuckGo, because I don't think Google spits out.
Oh, that was his thing. Like he has on his page Stormfront.
The Stormfront people were saying, "Hey, beware of Parlor," because of this guy. So I was talking about Alex Jones before. That's what reminded me of it. Alex Jones is a bit of a taint agent. Sometimes he's right. Sometimes he's just absurd. Yeah. And his absurdity makes it so that his rightness makes him look crazy.
It's almost like the feds are slipping LSD into his drink so he doesn't really get to us.
Yeah.
It's just all over the fucking place.
We're slipping dollars into his bank account so that he...
Yeah. I think there's something too. Pete and Bird from the Fadcast brought up not too long ago the whole idea, because we kind of went into the whole Fed thing. And I think they brought up a really good point that it's kind of like, I think we need to move past and just to some extent move past the, we can do it for fun, like which we kind of did here, Fed here, Fed there, Fed everywhere. But to some extent, you need to just like not fucking care. Like, right. You know what I mean? Like for me, like the reason why I'm not going over Parlor is because I'm kind of a tech idiot. So I need something user friendly. And then also it's just like the people that I'm seeing going over to Parlor, it's just not impressing me. So I'm just like, I'll just stick with MeWe for now and then just kind of feel it out as time goes on. I'm like super zucked right now, so that's why I'm on MeWe. But that's the only reason I even moved off, because I just kind of got to the point where like I can barely even operate. It's just I'm getting zucked at every turn. And it's like I'm actually not as bad as I used to, because I used to be more of a shit poster. But now I'm just getting fucked with all the time. And I don't even really – I like to think I post fire memes, but I don't really ever do anything that I find to be that offensive anymore. It's really actually the political shit that gets me. And even back in my shit posting days, it always seemed to be the political stuff that got me more than the fucking shit posting did, Yeah. Well, which is weird.
I will probably never get zucked. Fingers crossed. Well, maybe not even fingers crossed. I'd fuck Facebook, fuck Mark Zuckerberg. Yeah. But I'm kind of an SJW. Like I'm so bought into non-binary gender and all that stuff. Like to me, all of the gender and race stuff is actually a social construct. And so socially I fall right in with the left. Like it's perfectly fine with me if someone goes by pronouns other than what they look like. Obviously I think people take it too far, but so I don't say any of the really controversial stuff, and I hardly ever post anything on my actual timeline. Although I guess more recently I've been posting more stuff about COVID because that's what's really important to me. But the kind of like quote offensive stuff, which offensive is an objective term. I don't think anything's like offensive. Sure, it offends individuals. Some people are offended by stuff, but there's nothing that's just offensive. I think that's such a dumb word.
Yeah. I
don't post it. That's my point.
Yeah, I don't know. I never can get people who are offended by stuff. Like I don't know, like very few things. The last thing I even really feel like I found offensive was probably like I have such a hard time putting myself in that mindset of being offended. But probably the last thing, and I mean, aside from someone being like just straight up disrespectful to me, but the last time I could even see myself being offended was probably like the cuties thing. And that was it. And even then, that's more like maybe that for me is because it's a soft spot because I'm a dad with 2 daughters.
Sure.
So I'm like, fuck you. And my wife actually like basically forced herself to watch it because she was like, I just can't believe it. And I kind of caught bits and pieces, and I was like, fuck this shit. Like it was every bit as bad as they made it out to be, in my opinion.
What did she think of it?
My wife?
Yeah.
Oh, she fucking hated it. She
really?
was like, if you watch it, you would see, I actually did. It's probably, if you go back on the Liberty Movement page, I did a review of it because I watched it with my wife, and I didn't watch it I wasn't like watching it as a movie critic would watch it. I was kind of watching in passing because my wife kind of, to some extent, sort of fucking made me. But it was, I kind of broke it down a little bit and just kind of went into it. But yeah, it was very weird. Like it was very odd. Apparently the director said that she intentionally over-sexualized the girls to like make a point. And it's like, it was just weird. The way they did the shots and some of the stuff, they just like were like zooming in on them, like gyrating their hips in like weird fucking ways. And it's just like, to me, it was very much like, I'm going to murder someone to make a point of how you shouldn't murder people. It was very weird. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It was one of those like, this is the line and you're over it. But I mean, maybe that's just my sensibilities. I don't know.
Are you familiar with Monica Perez? Do you listen to her podcast?
Oh, fuck. That name super rings a bell.
Okay, so she hosts a podcast called The Propaganda Report. It's it's kind of conspiracy-ish. She was on the Dave Smith show, and actually, Pete Q was on one of her Patreon live streams, and he's the one who pushed me quite over the edge into agorism from, just run-of-the-mill ANCAPism.
Yeah, so, Pete's who brought me into this, to agorism as well, because I would consider myself an agorist too.
Right. So anyway, Monica Perez recently, like last week, it was the day after the election, the title of her episode was "Confusion is the Point." And it makes absolute sense. Confusion is always the point. It's how they push the narrative. And so Cuties is just part of that. Mm-hmm. You've got, on one hand, the sexualization of children, and the, pedophilia is just another sexual orientation. There's nothing weird about it.
MAPS. Minor attracted persons. You haven't heard that term yet?
Yeah. No, I hadn't. I'm out of the loop on it, but
that's, I don't know. You just see all these like it's like one of those Boog Boy meme things where they're like, "Oh, you're a map. Oh, that's nice. Keep digging."
Yeah, sure. Well, and fair enough. I mean, look, we can't control who or what we're attracted to necessarily. And if you're not hurting anybody, then fine, go be a map. Just don't fuck with any kids, right?
Yeah. The analogy I always make is if I had a fucking flock of sheep and there was a wolf, and I'd fucking shoot the wolf if he's fucking my sheep. Right. I mean, even to some extent,
even the wolves are attracted to sheep. I mean, yeah.
But the same time, fuck you, you're not fucking with my sheep.
so there's this. There's the what attempted normalization of God. I hate terms like deviancy and degeneracy and stuff like that. So I'll just say the normalization of sexual weirdness on one hand, and then there's the puritanical, demonization of sex on the other hand. Confusion is the point. There's no like even like normal courting behavior where a boy meets girl and they're both of age and they're in college or whatever. Boy tries something, puts his hand on her leg or whatever. This is all, and that moves on to making out, and that moves on to sexual behavior X, which leads on to sexual behavior Y, and all of a sudden they're having sex. And this is normal human sexual behavior. It's how courtship works. Especially in an amoral society where sexual mores are not the Christian, no sex before marriage, etc. sort of norms and values. That's how humans act. And even that, if the woman or even the man decides, oh, this was an unwelcome advance a day or a week or a month later, all of a sudden the guy is guilty of sexual assault or sexual harassment or some form of malfeasance. Whereas on the other hand, an actual sexually weird or deviant or abhorrent or degenerate or whatever thing, like little tiny girls gyrating on camera, is put out on Netflix for all the world to see. Netflix, by the way, which was apparently founded by Edward Bernays' nephew. The father of propaganda in America, who literally wrote the book and was not only like a consultant to actual propagandists in the government, but also kind of invented marketing and advertising as we know it. 9 out of 10 doctors smoke Camels. That's his most famous thing. Coming out on I think it was Johnny Carson or one of those old talk shows like Ed Sullivan or Carson or whatever, wearing a white lab coat and saying, the reason that I'm wearing this white lab coat is because it gives me a more authoritative voice. That's the guy who invented, this is how you sell shit to people.
God, who was it I was listening to I was listening to someone the other day, and they were talking about some guy. It's probably one of the guys. It was either Pete or Dave or somebody. One of those people within that circle. But they were talking about some guy that I can't remember what he's pushing, but I think he's like pushing like Kuv type shit, and he's technically a doctor, but he's not a medical doctor. Like he's a PhD, but I guess he's like running like political circles, and he's been multiple times had like white coats on and shit like that. And he's kind of playing that game as well. And it's kind of this like blurring the lines because yes, he's not a medical doctor, but he's a doctor, so he can kind of technically, you know what I mean? Because if you argue with him, then you're gonna get in the weeds. And he's like, I am a doctor, and you know what I mean? And you get what I'm saying? It's kind of like the whole confusion is the point. Yeah.
I was listening to the same thing. I can't remember what it was. So. I don't remember what it was. Yeah.
I assumed it was somebody me and you both listened to. I just can't remember who. I want to say it was Scott for some reason, Horton, but I can't remember. Yeah. I can't remember if it was or not.
I mean, maybe it was a Scott and Pete crossover episode.
Maybe
those are really good. Hey, here's the thing. Did you know that Trump's doctor is not an MD?
No,
he's not. He's an osteopath. He's a DO. And so doctors of osteopathy, like they're just as credible, I guess, as medical doctors. But they're a little more holistic. They're a little more woo-woo than MDs. So when I saw that on the guy's name, I think it was just on his name tag. It struck me a little bit. A DO, an osteopath, is a little bit more magical than an MD. They're kind of somewhere between a medical doctor and a chiropractor.
He probably doesn't care as long as they give him his amphetamines.
Yeah, for sure. Look, I mean, I don't think it's there anymore, but in Dallas, down the street from my mom, where I grew up, there was this DO who, I mean, he would give anyone any prescription they asked for. I think his name was Dr. Fisher, something like that. Anyway, he was essentially the neighborhood drug dealer.
I mean, I have no qualms with that.
For all those middle-aged housewives that just needed their Xanax, like.
So I want to segue back. I kind of missed my good opportunity for the segue, but we kind of went into deviancy and the whole sexual nature. I kind of wanted to. You brought it before that you're gay, and I do want to meet in the crossroads of, because we brought up religion and kind of how you walked away from that. And I mean, just a quick anecdote from me. I'm pretty much atheist as fuck. I mean, I'm past my like angry atheist stage. I don't really give a shit. I'm past the point. I'm like I completely accept this. Like, I like the idea of people being religious now because it's like kind of the whole concept of the magic. You know, I don't give a shit. I mean, if anything, for me, it makes you more susceptible to magic. I mean, that sounds shitty and condescending, but that's kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah, I mean, look, give me an NPC or midwit who believes in religion over an NPC or midwit who believes in the state any day of the week.
Yeah, you gave me an angle too, because I can then maybe I have a different angle of attack to go at with you. You know.
Sure. Yeah.
But point I'm getting at is actually for me, one of the biggest things that actually kind of got me on my path to where I am now as an anarchist, agorist, and then also what got me out of religion, because is for some reason, I don't fucking know why. I think it was just a big hot and butt issue when I was a kid. I've actually never been one to, I mean, I haven't really had many gay friends or anything like that. Not that I ever had an issue with it. Just never happened. I've had like gay friends or acquaintances kind of, but never like close ones. But for some reason, that was the issue that like logically never jived with me and like kind of got me to start doubting religion in general. Because I mean, I know a lot of people make like, doctrinal fucking arguments that it's okay. But I mean, I'm sure you've looked to do it. And I mean, there are some pretty damning parts of the Bible where it's kind of like, I mean, they're kind of getting at, they're not fucking cool with it. Yeah. And it never made sense to me because it's just like, for me, that like, even from every perspective, it doesn't make sense. Like from a biological perspective, it's kind of like, what would be the issue? I mean, sure, maybe if you were in a fucking community that was having issues with procreating or something, sure, but for the most parts, that's not really an issue. If anything, it helps to have some non-breeders around that can help to help out. Yeah. So
and in a lot of societies, I mean, the non-breeders are the mystics. They're the artists. They're the priests and And I mean. Don't get me started on gay priests, but in a society that doesn't normalize, deviant sex, or I mean, even in a society that does normalize deviant sex, but it's already normalized, where it's not just completely fucking up the psyche of a child, where sex isn't necessarily dirty or whatever. Then gay priest is probably a perfectly fine thing. I don't pretend to know. But anyway,
I think it'd be fine. If anything, I feel like Catholicism's issue is that they don't let them do that shit. For one, homosexuality is kind of looked on in Catholicism, and then two, they're not allowed to take normal mates in general. So it's like, what do you expect? They're gonna get their rocks off one way or another. They're fucking humans.
Yeah. The thing with Catholicism is especially a lot of even Christian denominations that aren't Catholicism specifically don't have a moral theology. They have ethics for sure, and they have morals and beliefs that aren't really backed up by a theology. Catholicism, to its credit, and the reason that I would consider myself an agnostic Catholic and not just an agnostic, is that Catholicism has an entire framework where one thing leads to another. Its moral theology is, and that goes from, you should have no other gods before the one true God, to don't fuck a dude in his ass. I mean, all of those things are of a piece. One thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. The prohibition against birth control is part of it. And I know that's super controversial, even in Catholic, even in like, centrist to conservative Catholic circles. Most Catholic women are using the pill. Like, it's not, it's not a thing that's widely accepted. But if you look at Catholic moral theology, there's a reason for it. It's not just do this, don't do that because it makes God sad. It's do this, don't do that because the purpose of humanity is to procreate. and it's to love one another. And if you get rid of that unification through marital sex and the procreation through marital sex, if you separate those two, or if you get rid of one and keep the other, then you've made a bastardization, a mockery of that sexual function that exists in humanity for that very purpose. It's what makes us different from other animals. Other animals aren't necessarily unified by sex, but they use it to procreate. They don't have ceremonial or sacramental marriage. Sure, there's some that mate for life, but that's just a function of their biology. It's not a function of their morality. And I think that that's a beautiful thing, and it's part of the reason that I left the church, because I don't know that it's true. I think that if there is a true religion, that logically speaking, it is Catholicism, given the so if God exists, then God must be a personal God. He's not a divine watchmaker. I don't think that there's any incentive for an all-knowing, all-powerful being to create existence and then just not have a reason for it. The reason for it had to have been love. It had to have been because I need companionship. It's in my nature to create because I am the creator. And if God is a personal God, then God had to develop relationships with the persons who he created. And if that relationship is based on sort of an agreement that we're going to act in order to please you, then there has to be some form of retribution when we don't act to please him. But there's nothing perfect enough to please him. And so God has to become the person who is that retribution. And that's where Jesus comes in. And from that flows everything else in Catholicism. And I'm not going to get too much into it. Mm-hmm. But if God exists, Catholicism is the only logical religion, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Either that, or there are infinite paths, which I'm more kind of aligned with, I think.
I'm more of the mind that if there is a God, it would have to be the deistic God, of that he, for some reason, she, multiple gods, whatever, created it and just like didn't give a fuck. I always kind of was like appealed to God, who's the dude who fucking writes all the spooky stories? They're like weird and cosmic, and God, it's gonna bug me. I can't think of his name right now. He's the one with the fish people and shit. You know what I'm talking about?
I have no idea. That's awesome.
Oh, fuck. But I know he has one that's he's the one who's known for the Cthulhu. He's Lovecraft. But yeah. The ultimate god in that is the dreaming god, and he's the one who created everything, and he's literally just this unconscious deity that is dreaming up things, sure. And he doesn't give a flying fuck about anything. It's just that his dreams manifest reality, and then one day he's gonna wake up and it's all gonna be over. And like I always thought that was kind of like, if there's a god, why would he give a fuck about us? But
brings it back, of course, to Vin Armani,
yeah,
who has a wonderful like multi-part podcast series with a guy named Dave. And if you give me a second, I can look it up. I think it's like Dave Johnson or something like that. It's somebody nobody's ever heard of. He's a Free State Project guy who was in New Hampshire, and he and Vin became friends in New Hampshire, and they just made this amazing series of podcasts. Dave Butler is his name. I want to interview him on my show. And he seems to be a firm believer in the simulation theory, where we're
statistically,
yeah, we're just software.
Yeah,
which that seems just as plausible as Catholicism to me. Which means that it seems more plausible than Baptistism or Islam or whatever. So,
I've heard this argument before, and technically speaking, statistically we are, because if you think about it, like someone could get to that point. It's a whole rabbit trail, and it's kind of fun, and it's almost one of those like you get to a point where like, maybe it's one of those, it's kind of like, is there a God? There's no way we're gonna know unless they reveal itself. And the same idea with that. So you find some major glitch in the matrix, you never know. It's a fun thought experiment, but yeah.
If we're living in a simulation, like right now, are we at the point where like the people who wrote that simulation are like, oh my God, they're onto us? Like,
yeah, someone stopped writing code at this point.
yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
the other thing is that's really neat is that this I think his name is Terrence McKenna.
Terrence McKenna.
He was kind of one of the people who remember in 2012 when the Mayan calendar was supposed to end and that was going to be the end of the world.
Yeah.
They even made a movie 2012. It was very early 2013, March of 2013, when simulation theory first entered the fray. Like, it's very plausible that if we are living in a simulation, that 2012 was like the year that we realized it. And,
Yeah.
and like, I mean, maybe we did usher in the eschaton. Like maybe right now, this entering into this new age of magic, this new age of superstition, this just freaking weird era that we're entering into. I mean, maybe that is the eschaton. Maybe we are like at the end of whatever time is, according to the simulation that we're all living in. You know, I mean, I don't know that I subscribe to it, but it's fun to think about.
Not to throw it off with this is a fun tangent, but I kind of want to bring it back to what we were talking about earlier. Have you ever read? You're not a huge comics guy, are you, or not really? Mm-hmm. Or yes. One that I would suggest. I mean, like for one, it's honestly probably top three. My top three favorite comics of all time is Preacher. I don't know if you're. I mean, I'm sure you probably saw the shitty fucking AMC one they did not too long ago. They did like a thing of it. But read the comic if you ever get a chance. I think it's like 6 or 7 volumes. It's fucking amazing. Super.
Cool. Huh? I said that's accessible. And I have an iPad Pro, which is perfect for reading comics on. So
it's fucking phenomenal. It's like super irreverent, but like the whole point is that it's like the preacher and like he somehow gets this what's called the word of God, which he ends up like inheriting this like power somehow from some cosmic deity where like anything he says like becomes reality kind of deal. And it threatens God and like all of like heaven and shit like that. And anyways, my point I was getting to is the God in that story is like the whole point of the whole story is he's trying to find God and trying to get him to fix shit. Like he's trying to find God because God was just like, fuck this, I'm not doing it anymore. And you come to find out that God is actually like kind of a fucking asshole. And like he literally only created us because he was fucking lonely and he was so fucking absorbed with himself that he needed something to praise him and worship him. And like that was the whole purpose of everything. And it's funny because you were like bringing that up and I was like thinking of Preacher and it was like literally everything you were said but flipped to where it was like a negative. To where it's like he's just an asshole and he's just so full of himself that's the only reason why he created anything was just to worship him. And it's like some people say that, and I remember like growing up religious, people say that like it's our duty to worship him. But it's like if you really think about it, it's like what the fuck? Like who would do that? Like would you create a race of beings just to fucking worship you? Like how full of yourself are you?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, that's the Satanist whole point is, how narcissistic do you have to be?
Yeah.
But really, I mean, why do we create? Why would any creative person create something other than to glorify in it, to get that sort of rush, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So I found Preacher in PDF on what may or may not be a pirate site. So I'll definitely purchase it.
It's phenomenal. It's super funny. Honestly, there are moments that almost made me cry. It's beautiful. It's hilarious. It's irreverent. It's like I don't know. It's like everything a comic should be, in my opinion. It's fucking awesome.
I've never read a comic book in my life.
This will be a good start.
my partner Andrew has recently turned me on to anime, and it's the most beautiful art form I've ever seen in my life. And do you still have me? You froze up. Okay, I have lots of bars. I'm chatting you. You're still frozen. Hopefully, if this is on YouTube, you're just bearing with us for just a second. Jose's camera froze, and I can see the timer ticking up. So it's maybe on his end. I don't know. Oh no, he cut out. And I'm still live. Okay, so what I was saying is that anime is like the most beautiful art form I've ever seen. And I just noticed the other day that anime music is now like my favorite genre of music. It's insane. So I'm very open to now reading comic books, which will be brand new for me. I've just messaged Jose on Messenger, and he's typing. This is great. I'm so terrible at monologuing. This is why I host an interview show. His power flickered out. He's typing. He's typing. And may have to give it a minute. Okay, well, I'm still live, I think. So you might be seeing this on video later. I'm terrible at monologuing. What else? So I have a new podcast. It is 6 episodes in. It will be 7 episodes in tomorrow, November 12th. It's called the Urban Agorist Podcast. And I know Jose wanted to ask me about it. So I'm going to let him do that when or if he jumps back on. But you can find me at urbanagorist.com. And I've got my kind of my shtick. I'm still finding my groove. But I've interviewed like pseudo celebrities like Vin Armani. I guess Vin Armani is like a real celebrity. He had a TV show and everything. Oh, he just messaged me. Jose just messaged me. He said, lol, if you want to wrap it and do plugs, that's cool. Lol. So I'm doing plugs right now. I'm telling him I'm plugging. All right. So Urban Agorist, it's a podcast. You can get it on iTunes. You can get it on Stitcher and Spotify. And look, if you can't find it on your podcatcher of choice, because I know that a lot of people have had trouble with that, shoot me a message on Twitter. That's the best way to get a hold of me. I'm at James L. J. And I'm pretty active on Twitter. So shoot me a follow if you'd like. Urban agorism to me. So agorism is like the school of thought that libertarianism and politics is incompatible. And so what libertarians instead need to do is just subvert the state through what's called counter economics. And counter economics is kind of manifested through obviously the black markets, which are completely illegal markets. It's what got Ross Ulbricht locked up for, hopefully not for his life, but probably. It's what the drug dealer down the street engages in. It's guns with the serial numbers filed off, etc. And there's also gray markets, which are things that are legal, but maybe are you're kind of subverting the system, like a mechanic who is just working on cars out of his own garage rather than registering a business, or a hairstylist who's doing hair out of her kitchen rather than getting a license in a salon, that kind of thing. And that kind of thing really appeals to me. And I think, and agorists think, that this sort of thing is way more effective and way more powerful than any party politics or elections or anything else can be in the furtherance of the cause for liberty and human freedom. And the more people who are engaging in this, and we've seen it. This is what brought down the USSR. The Soviet Union collapsed in large part because of people, individuals, working above and below the established markets. Hey, Jose, welcome back. I'm talking about agorism.
I'm glad you're on your podcast. This is super professional of me.
No, it's great. You're in the middle of a hurricane. It's great. Maybe you'll get blown away.
Yeah, that's funny. So where are you at? You doing your plugs?
Yeah, I'm doing plugs. I'm talking about agorism. I just went off on a little bit of a tangent about why I think agorism is so beautiful and so much more effective and powerful and frankly aligned with libertarianism. And I'm the last person in the world to say, so and so is not a real libertarian. I'll never do that. And that's one criticism that I have of Samuel Konkin, the founder of agorism, the developer of agorism. Whenever he would talk about the Libertarian Party, he put the word libertarian in quotes. And I'm so off camera. I've been doing this all night, talking with my hands and like just not being on the camera. It bothers me.
It's condescending.
Yeah, it bothers me when people play gatekeeper. I don't like that. Look, Donald Trump is more libertarian than Joe Biden, and there's no way around that. He just is. He wants to subvert the state. He wants to lower taxes, and he wants to increase spending and tariffs and close down the borders and stuff like that. But from a philosophical standpoint, such as it is, Donald Trump doesn't have a whole lot of philosophy or ideology, but he is way more anti-state than Joe Biden, who thinks that the state is the solution to all of our problems. Which is, I have no idea why I started talking about that. Oh, gatekeeping. Gatekeeping to me is terrible. I hate it. Yeah. I do not like so-and-so is not a real libertarian.
That's one of the big things that I really liked about the whole idea of what we're doing over the liberty movement, where it's like we just try to avoid politics altogether and be neutral. Because it's like, I mean, I'm very much on board with I'm a non-voting anarchist. I don't think that's the path to success. At the same time, if that's the route you want to engage, it's kind of like it doesn't really do me any benefit to fucking shoo you away and tell you how shitty you are. Because if anything, it's like, why would that make you want to be what I'm about? Like, why would that make you want to go down that road of agorism? And also at the same time, like, even if you are going down that road, why can't, if you're less of a gatekeeper, you may be able to get them to maybe start doing actual actions that would be more in line with agorism, but I mean, I get where Konkin was coming from, because it was like, in his eyes, this was the consistent application of libertarianism, which I agree. But at the same time, it's like, sometimes I think it helps to demonstrate, like, hey, come along with me and we'll do this together, and not be like, fuck you because you're doing this other thing,
Yeah. I think, and I talked to Miguel Duque, who I think you know him. I've
seen him, yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely in the liberty movement, but he is a self-identified agorist, and also he's the chair of his county Libertarian Party, and I think that Konkin would find those things to be, incompatible, and I find them to be a synthesis.
To be fair, I mean, like, I see agorism to some extent. It's almost like objectivism, and where like Ayn Rand defined objectivism, Konkin defined agorism. So if we're going to be technical, I do think you actually should be like, he's not an agorist, but at the same time, he's employing, I don't know, it's almost like what's the word I'm looking for? It's like he practices agorism.
Yeah.
In a sense. Because it's, I mean, and this is getting the weeds. I mean, I'm not trying to be an ass to the guy. I mean, he's not here to defend himself, but it is one of those things where I think like, fucking, it's the same idea as someone calling themselves an objectivist, but then not actually following objectivist principles. And I don't consider myself an objectivist,
But even like the Ayn Rand Society or the objectivist or whatever the hell it is, they've gone away from Ayn Rand from some of her teachings. I mean, I think that things evolve with the time as necessary, and we're in a hyper political age. So I can't fault somebody for. Well, I don't know. I mean, look, I vote. I probably will never vote again, but I voted in every election of my adult life. I understand that I'm just playing a game. And there's an Agorist podcast. What the hell is it called? I think it's the Off-Grid Outpost or something like that. It's fantastic. It's this guy, and he's old, and this chick, and she's young, and she's just recently she's just recently discovered agorism and libertarianism, and he's sort of an old hat. But she's also like just, I'm not gonna say dumb, but she doesn't know things. The Off-Grid Outpost, highly recommend it. She doesn't know things. Like on their last episode, she had to have him explain to her how the Electoral College works. I'm like, I don't know how the Electoral College works since like second grade. So it's just really interesting to hear them talk. But anyway, she was talking about how in this election, this is the first election she hasn't voted in, and she doesn't feel guilty for not voting. She feels left out. It's like when all your friends are playing a game on the playground and you're like not able to join.
Yeah.
It's not like a duty. It's not a civic duty to go play the game with your friends. It's what all your friends are doing, and you kind of want to feel part of the game. But at some point, and I am at that point now, I think we'll see in 2024 if this lasts. But I'm at that point where it's more important to me that I not play the game because the game is destructive than it is for me to fit in with my friends.
That's where I'm at, yeah.
And so anyway, urban agorism. So that's agorism. And agorism works really well if you're out in the middle of nowhere and you've got a homestead where you can.
Hey, I'm not to throw off your shit. I gotta go to the bathroom like crazy. You're doing your plugs right now, still, right?
Yeah.
All right, I'll be right back. So if you can want to drop your plugs and go on about urban agorism for a moment.
I have to pee too. Look, this is my tequila glass.
Yeah.
This is my water loud ass cup.
Well, we've been going for a while. Have you already done your plugs? Because I know I was my
no. Let me talk about urban agorism specifically. Real quick, just because. So I'm a city boy. I love living in the city, and agorism works really well out in the middle of nowhere. And I want to figure out a way, and I don't know if it's possible.
I'll be right back.
Yeah,
keep going.
Yeah. Go pee. Go do your thing. I want people to be self-sufficient wherever they want to be, and whether that means compromising a little bit. Like I love city parks, and I like the fact that I don't need to dig a well or have a septic tank that I have to. I don't even know how a septic tank works. I don't think you have to clean it, but like, why should I need to know how a septic tank works? I think it's possible to, in other words, live on the grid. Well, that was really fast, dude.
Oh, super quick. I was the quickest pee in my life.
Wow. You must have a bladder the size of a nickel. That's oh
yeah.
Yeah. So what I was saying was like, I don't think it's necessarily to live out in the middle of nowhere and also be self-sufficient. I think that, you can collaborate with your neighbors and you can build a hell of a garden that will feed your family, at least in vegetables. And if I live in Minneapolis where, we can have, I think it's up to 12 chickens. So like you can have a little urban farm just in your backyard. I don't think necessarily that you have to move out to the middle of nowhere in order to be an agorist. That said, Jack Spirko, who is like Papa Bear Agorist, at least alive today, has been saying forever and ever and ever, get the hell out of the cities. And I think like I live in Minneapolis. I'm at ground zero of George Floyd and the riots and protests and all that stuff. I understand, and we've had this huge spike in violent crime and murders and stuff like that. So I understand that, especially for someone who doesn't live in cities and hasn't lived in cities, where that might be a little bit scary. I've lived in high crime areas my entire life, and I've never been the victim of a property or violent crime. So I just don't think it's necessary to relocate, and it might just be me might just be me being hard-headed and willful. But if there's a way, then I'd like to find it. So
Yeah, I mean, I think there is something too, like, providing tips or going into helping people. Because even I'm of the opinion that I think if you can, you should get the fuck out. But that's not practical for everybody. There's a reason why people are centralized in urban locations. It's, that's where a lot of the work is. A lot of people do get trapped in certain urban areas with the lack of transportation because they take, public transportation, which that's something that's kind of like you probably should figure that out too. To break away from that, because now you're reliant on it. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like you need to find ways to get around it. I mean, if all you can do is a little herb garden and that's all you can do, it's fucking something, and it's like, it's more like taking baby steps. It's kind of like I went into my first podcast, I went into like reading. It's like, I try my best to just read at least a page a day. And it's kind of the same idea with like agorism. It's like, if you want to like break off and start being more independent, it's not just going to be like you just find this magical thing where you're all of a sudden independent. It's like you need to take those baby steps.
Well, in the city I live in, we have farmers markets. Every neighborhood has its own farmers market. And we have a huge, like even the city government's website has like a directory of urban farms where you can go and you can buy your produce directly from the farmer. So I think those are ways that agorism can thrive in cities. And actually, if you read Carl Hess's Community Technology, that is the kind of standard for urban agorism. They're in the middle of Washington, D.C., and they build a neighborhood with aquaponics that is completely self-sufficient. I don't think they're completely off the grid, but at the very least, they've got food taken care of.
I mean, there's. Oh, sorry, I mean I cut you off.
There's something. I mean,
go ahead.
Just if you can, either like for me, I mean, I live in a 2-person household. It's not like I'm raising kids. It's me and my partner and my dog. So easy for me to say. But if you can feed yourself and live where you want to live, and for me, that's in the middle of a city. I live in the ghetto. We play fireworks or gunshots almost every night of the week, and I love it. Like it's not scary for me, and that's perfectly fine.
There's something Sal brings up a lot where he's like, he, to be honest, is kind of a moot point now because he's moved to Florida and I think he's more rural area.
I know,
but
traitor.
He always brought up how it's like he has a better market there. And there's something to the urban area. Like if you are an agorist, it's like it may actually end up working out better for you if you play your cards right and you work your gigs. And it's the same idea that Conkin went into, and how the agora, if anything, thrives under pressure, because it's like you look at places like the USSR at its peak, and it was like there was so much fucking agorism going on at one point. Like the majority of the market was the black market, and it was like they just turned a blind eye because they needed shit.
and alongside Night, the kind of novelization of Conkin's ideas,
great book.
I mean, it's New York, like it's right in the middle of the big city. Granted, the people in the story are very wealthy, so they kind of have that wiggle room.
That helps.
But on the other hand, I mean, I guess not destitute, but people in what would you call them? Like downtrodden, more poor neighborhoods, high crime areas, whatever.
If anything, more state controlled, because that's I think a major function of urban areas is there's kind of a more looming state presence. There's more regulations. There's more state involvement. There's a state transport that we went into. There's all that. And I think it does. And then also it's a high concentration of people. So I think that opens a lot of opportunities for a smart agorist.
Yeah. There's also a good deal of mind your own business though, which I think is good for agorism. I drive down the street in any number of neighborhoods near me, and you smell weed. Like, it's not like it's right out in the open, I mean, people are just
high population area. That's a function of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So if you're out in the middle of nowhere in a country area on your farm or your homestead or whatever, you can also smoke weed and not get caught. But, in the suburbs where, Karen next door, is going to call the cops if she gets the barest hint of weed. think that's where the real problem, and that's just me. Don't get me started on suburbs. I hate suburbs.
Yeah, there's different functions. I feel like that's a good example. Like me out here in the country where I live, if I'm smoking weed, there's a different reason why the cops aren't going to fuck with me. Like I have a gated property.
Yeah.
I have a good amount of. They're not going to come fuck with me. For one, it's like I have enough land to where like my neighbor probably won't even smell it.
Yeah.
And also, it's like I'm just going to be like, you got a fucking warrant. Like it's just a different dynamic when you're out in the country, and it's almost like the reason why they won't fuck with me is because I have so much freedom. But then, like, if anything, it's like that in between of like, you know, like when you in the suburbs, but where you're at in like more of a city type area, it is almost like you have so many people that like the dense population makes it so no one fucking cares. And it also is a matter of like they have no way of really identifying who it is because there's so many fucking people. And
that translates to other things, other black and gray market activity as well. I guess that's all I'm saying. Like, I mean, I bought bootleg DVDs off guys out of their trunk, that kind of thing. So yeah, I think that agorism is compatible wherever you live, whatever your lifestyle is. And so I'd like to try to expose that as much as I can. So yeah, that's, I guess, my plug, urbanagorist.com, Urban Agorist on iTunes, Spotify, everything else. James LJ on Twitter.
Yeah, and like I always say, I'll tell all the people that I'll put all this shit in the video description. Okay. So you just gotta look there, and I'll have all the links. Cool. So you got your plug.
Don't link to my Facebook. I'm paring back from that. So
okay, Twitter, well, like just I'll have you send me over whatever links you want. Just don't include Facebook, and then that'll be it. Shit, I really enjoyed this conversation. I would have been able to go for another hour and a half, but I feel like we're going to lose people. You know, maybe we'll have to do this again some other time because I think we're going to get some good conversation. And I mean, I'll probably come over because I mean, I kind of have my own agoric thing going on here. I have a fucking kitty cat business that so we'll talk about that at some point. That'll be a fun one. So
yeah, I'll go I guess that's one other thing. One other real little plug. If you own a business where you're selling cats or I had a mobile meat processor guy who's just like a butcher. He goes out to people's ranches and slaughters their cows on site rather than making them go to the slaughterhouse. Under the table hairstylists, just Bitcoin billionaire, whatever. If you got stuff like that, definitely reach out to me because that's the kind of thing I'd really like to be focusing on my podcast. So yeah, I like that. Yeah, I mean, I listened to the episode too, and I want to have Josh on at some point too, the meat processor guy. But all right. Anyways, I'll go to my plugs real quick. I'm assuming you're still watching this point. It's like an hour and a half. I mean, I had fun with this. This was a blast. We went in a lot of different directions. This is mostly supposed to be just focused on James as a person, but we went into all sorts of different directions. I'm cool with it. I fucks with it. But we got the Facebook group, you know, the Liberty Movement. We also got the MeWe group that you guys can join in. All this is going to be in the description. We got our email, which is thelibertymovementglobal@gmail.com. We're working on compiling an email list. So either email me on the email. If you're already in the group, the MeWe or Facebook, shoot me or any of the other admins a fucking a message and let us know your email, and we'll throw it to the email we're working on. Hopefully here soon. Maybe get a newsletter to go together. Also probably going to site. So because we've been having issues with Facebook, and you know, I mean, maybe now the election's over, they'll chill and it won't be as big of a deal. But you know, we're learning that we need to set up other channels. So we got merch. I don't know if you've been noticed, I've been sipping on this all day. This is one of the merch. I showed you a shirt yesterday. This is my buddy Derek. He's one of the admins, you know. So here's the fucking the Liberty Movement logo. He's got his own merch. That'll be in the description. So if you want any of that shit, that's good stuff. So like, share, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. That shit helps out. Definitely go check out James shit over the Urban Agorist. He's got good stuff. Check out that Vin episode. Really, all his episodes are great. They did one not too long ago that kind of hurt my feelings a little bit about where they kind of shit on V for Vendetta a little bit. That's Hey, if you thought that was bad, you should listen to the Actual Anarchy's like original episode on V for Vendetta.
You shit on it.
Just savage it. It is so, I
will admit I get why people shit on it, because it's for me it's like a nostalgia thing.
Yep, me too.
I love it. It's like honestly probably my top 3 like favorite movies and books. I have the comic book. I read the comic book. The comic book goes more into like philosophy and stuff, and it's a little bit more in depth. The book is great or the movie's great because it gets more topical because it's like more timely because they kind of tie it into the whole like 9/11 era and shit. And like, but yeah, there's something about it that's just so nostalgic, and I get it. It like, especially with Alan Moore, it's very much like some sort of like weird like porn for like people who are boog boys, but also like ancoms. But like, and which is not me either of those. But at the same time, like something about it is just like, I don't know, it's just fucking nostalgic, and there is some like cool philosophy aspects to it. But at the same time, yes, I'm not an ancom. No, I'm not on board with the boog boy shit. But there is something to it, and it is like this, like it's almost like porn for an ancom boog boy. But yeah, I don't know. Anyways, definitely go check that out. It's a great episode. I mean, it might hurt your feelings if you're a big fan of it. I mean, because I've read the book and the movie and everything.
I'm going to be on their podcast talking about the movie High Rise, which is a class warfare movie that I love. So that'll be in a couple of weeks. We're doing a Black Friday event with that because there's some scenes in the movie that relate to it. But okay, I'm gonna piss my pants if we don't sign off. So
yeah, all right, I'll let you go. I know you're feeling tortured. I kind of caved into the unprofessional thing and ran off and peed like a little girl. But
I know, but we're almost done. So
all right, this went way longer than I thought. But like I said, I had a fun time. It was really great having you on, James. So
yeah, thanks so much, Jose.
Yeah, all right, we'll see you.
Bye.
All right, deuces, bye.